So, welcome, distinguished guests. Thank you for being here, and thank you for inviting me to be here, the organizers. Just practicing here. So where is Liverpool? This is a map of the United Kingdom. Liverpool is on the left-hand side. Its importance historically has been that it was the nearest bit of England to America, so that's why it prospered as a port. It has a hinterland of four other boroughs. You see on the right-hand side, this map shows the red bit is Liverpool city, and there are four blue boroughs around it. These are political districts which have now become the metropolitan area of Liverpool, and it's set in the northwest of England, which is the entire green area shown there. And I mention this for reasons that will come back in my talk later on, one of which is evaluating the pool of the city during Capital of Culture Year on audiences to come from the whole of the northwest of the country as well as further afield. So this is what Liverpool looks like now. It didn't look like that in the 1980s. I went to Liverpool in 1987. I'm not going to show you any pictures of Liverpool in 1987 because it's too depressing to do that. On the right-hand side, there are some statues of the Beatles. The Beatles left Liverpool. They didn't stay. They left in 1965, more or less, early 1960s. Between the time that the Beatles left and the time that I arrived, 20 years later, Liverpool's population had halved, 50% of the population in the 60s. This is a huge trauma, very, very difficult for any city to survive a loss of 50% of its population. I'm showing you some beautiful photos of what Liverpool looks like now. The one on the left shows Albert Dock, which is a wonderful heritage site, and the Tate Gallery, of which I was director, is housed in these old buildings. So I need to introduce myself a little more in order to tell the story. Although I went to Liverpool in 1987, I didn't become director of Tate until 1990, and I remained director until 2000. In 1993, I attempted to create a Northwest visual arts festival. So a visual arts festival that would encompass the whole of the region of the Northwest of England. I failed. The reason I failed was because the area was very depressed. So I would go to visit an artist in their studio, and I would talk for an hour. At the end of our conversation, I would say, where should I go next? Which artist should I visit? They would be silent, nothing. This is a situation of no culture. If the most basic kind of culture, and what is absolutely essential, is that people should talk to each other and should recognize each other all the time. This is what culture is in a city. If people are not supporting each other, as these artists were not, then effectively there is no culture. There is nothing to work with. How can you do anything if nobody speaks to anybody else? So that's one thing. I just have two things to talk about. One is how important conversation and teamwork are. The other is how important it is to commit to the present. to the present. Again, there is a tendency in old cities to think of culture as being something old, as coming from the past. But unless we can commit to the present, there is no future. And it's really, really important for people to believe in the future if they are to enjoy where they live. So I failed in 1993 to make a Northwest Arts Festival, which was the attempt to get a lot of people to collaborate on a cultural festival. But in 1998, I organized an exhibition called Art Transpennine, which went sideways across the country. It was in 40 different sites between Liverpool and Hull on the east coast. This is the Tate Gallery, what it looks like now. This is a ridiculous piece of art, which I commissioned. I admit it, for Art Transpennine in 1998. It's called Super Lamb Banana. And the people of Liverpool adopted it. I'll come back to why this matters. So in 1998, the same year as Art Transpennine, we founded Liverpool Biennial because the experience of the Art Transpennine exhibition had been positive. So galleries had begun to talk to each other because I was working in a visual art background. So galleries started to talk to each other. The experience was positive. They thought, okay, let's have a biennial that will pull together the different arts organizations and we can practice this muscle of collaboration. In the year 2000, I became so interested in the biennial that I resigned from the Tate in order to continue doing the biennial. Also in the year 2000, Liverpool City commissioned consultants to start writing the bid to be European Capital of Culture. And I knew something was happening when I was invited to visit the office of the Chief Executive of the Council, David Henshaw. And on the back wall of his office, there was a huge photograph of Super Lamb Banana. That showed something had changed. In 2002, we made our second biennial, and fortunately, the judges for European Capital of Culture were able to be in Liverpool at that time. They witnessed what was going on, and in 2003, our bid was successful. So, now I want to introduce you to some key figures, because history does need personalities. First, David Wade Smith. He was not a politician, he was an entrepreneur. He was selling trainers and tracksuits, sports clothing, to people in Liverpool. And he was making a lot of money doing it. And when we founded Liverpool Biennial, he came knocking on our door and he said, I want to be a part of the biennial. The reason was, at that time, Liverpool Biennial appeared to be the only art organization or art festival with the word contemporary in its title. Contemporary. You can't sell fashion clothes unless people are interested in being contemporary. Heritage doesn't sell fashion. You have to believe in the present and be interested in what's coming next, the future, for fashion to make sense at all. So he knew that Liverpool Biennial of Contemporary Art was going to help him sell his clothes. Mike Story was the leader of the city council. In real life, he was a schoolmaster. Well, in real life, he was also leader of the city council. But I think it's really important that here was a man who understood culture from having to teach it every day to people. Culture is what we all learn at home, at school, so he understood how culture is the glue that keeps people speaking to each other, working together, thinking about the future. David Henshaw was the chief executive of the executive of the city council. He was the man who had Superland Banana blown up as a photograph and put on the back wall of his office. So Bob Scott was invited to be the leader of the bid by Mike Story and David Henshaw. And Bob Scott came up with this fantastic approach. His slogan was, don't ask what 2008 can do for you, ask what you can do for 2008. So he adapted John F. Kennedy's saying and made it clear that nothing was going to happen unless the people of Liverpool adopted 2008 as their opportunity to do something. Asking people not to participate, but to actually do it. They are the people, you, the citizens, are the people who are responsible for this event. Without the citizens, it won't happen. It's not about participation, it's about actually doing it, getting up and doing it. So I already mentioned the importance of the word contemporary. The first Liverpool Biennial of Contemporary Art was funded, the money was given by an artist. We were lucky to find a very rich artist, and he gave more than £1 million to make it happen. And the reason I was actually asking him for money to build the Tate. He didn't want to give money to the Tate because he thought the Tate could find money from other places. But he said, let's make a biennial because making a biennial will help Liverpool become a better place for artists to live and work. He was interested in artists, whether artists would be there. And of course, the biennial is a visual arts event, so you might say it was primary for artists. But of course, we all share the same space. And if you make a place better for artists to live and work, it is better for everybody to live and work in that place. We all share the same space. The principles of Liverpool Biennial were about partnership. We founded it in the knowledge that it was nothing without partnership. It was everything if everybody worked together. Kinds of partnership involve having a shared vision, making the place better for everybody to live in. Shared resources. All the different arts organizations involved had to commit to putting their own program, their own money into making the biennial happen. Shared audiences. Of course, it's a huge benefit that if you create an event which involves a lot of different organizations, then everybody else's audience will travel to your institution as well. So sharing audiences increases everybody's audience. And shared civic responsibilities, a sense of responsibility towards those communities who don't yet take part appear on the street and participate in events, who don't make their own culture visible. So, how did we prepare ourselves for 2008? And most of what I'm saying next is about the visual arts organisations. It's about Liverpool Biennial, Tate Gallery, and so on. Marketing, higher education, stakeholder. I'm going to talk briefly about each of these sections. Audience development, organisational development. So first, marketing. We set up a very loose partnership called Veil, Visual Arts in Liverpool, and we all contributed a little money to make it work, and we hired a PR agency specifically to promote visual arts in Liverpool from a London base. So in the national press and international press, suddenly Liverpool had a PR agency speaking for our programs, and that makes a difference. It wasn't easy because each visual arts organisation, any organisation, is proud of its own brand and doesn't like to share its own brand with other people. So that the business of partnership in a marketing context demands that everybody's ego is just taken down a little bit in the understanding that the ensemble, the collective, is more important than the individual brand. So I've talked about marketing. Higher education. In Liverpool there are 3 universities. Universities in many parts of the world are criticised for being ivory towers, too self-contained, not related enough to the city in which they are placed. Big organisations, often with money, but they don't relate to the town in which they exist. This was a criticism of the 3 universities in Liverpool also. So the arts organisations combined together, and we talked to the universities and set up something called Culture Campus, which was an association between the 3 universities and all of the visual arts organisations to try to take advantage of the cultural opportunity of 2008. So this was an opportunity for higher education. We focused on the opportunity for higher education. Of course, there were also opportunities for visual arts organisations. So inter-university collaboration. Universities often don't like to collaborate with each other because they are holding their own research interests like a territory. But of course, collaboration and conversation can make everybody's research go faster. Connecting town and gown, connecting the academics with the business people, or with the librarians, or with making sure that there is a connection between what happens in a university and what happens outside. Making better use of the resources, so the universities can make use of the libraries that are held in the arts organisations, for instance, if there is conversation happening between them. And finally, but most important from the point of view of the universities, together they could market the idea of Liverpool as a higher education centre. So instead of each university focusing on its own prospectus, they joined together to say, Liverpool's a great place to be a student. And that really helped them all recruit more students to come to Liverpool. So, as you can see, Culture Campus is Liverpool branded. The idea was to to make Liverpool more attractive, more famous as a destination for students, rather than a tourist destination. So next, LARC was an association between 8 of the largest arts organisations in Liverpool, and we were focused initially on advocacy for our own sector. That's to say, we were focused on making arguments to government, city government, regional government, national government, about funding, showing the good work that we were doing with communities, trying to make our city a better place to live, and hoping to get more money from the government, whichever branch of government. But in order to do that, we had to write reports, and we had to do a lot of evaluation of what we were doing, and so we began to understand how we could develop our own audiences and our own programs through collaboration. So again, the story is about collaboration. And there's also opportunities for organizational development to do with ticketing, to do with accounting and all that kind of thing. So those are the arts organizations. You will notice 2 national organizations among them that say nationally funded, direct from the state. It's the Royal Philharmonic. And with an equivalent, LARC, the one the organisation I just mentioned, was for 8 large organisations, but there was also a looser organisation of more than 50 small arts organisations who were following exactly the same route as LARC, but they faced different kinds of problems, and so it was easier for them to work in a different format called SMAC. The culture company itself was actually very innovative in trying to use culture to tackle some of the problems of health and poverty in the outlying neighbourhoods of Liverpool. So I shouldn't forget to mention them. I'm hurrying up now because I'm aware that Rhesus is looking at me. After 2008, what difference did it make? So the outcomes for the Culture Campus, the higher education initiative, was that Liverpool became much better recognised as a major attraction for students. We began to host PhD students and lecturers between the university and the arts organisations. So that makes a very concrete and direct link between arts organisations and universities. And in 2005, they started building the John Lennon Academy of Art and Design, so we got a new art school out of the situation. The LARC, of course, commissioned a report on the year, and you can still read this, you can still find it online. I'm not going to go into any detail, but everybody's visitor figures increased, our audiences felt better looked after, and all the arts organisations benefited from the experience. Statistics is not so important, though, as Rolf has already said. It's how people feel inside that really matters. There has been a change in the politics of Liverpool. That's to say, the 5 boroughs that I mentioned earlier are now treated as a metropolitan region. Previously, the 5 boroughs tried to disagree with each other as often as possible while fighting for central government money. So that's a major step forward. And we have a mayor's office which is established so that we have some leadership across all 5 boroughs. Culture is now synonymous with Liverpool. But the last thing I want to say really is about business. Business is a form of culture. You can't do business without talking to people. Business is about the exchange of ideas as well as the exchange of money. it's really important to think of business as a part of this year of culture. Unless business and culture are working together, then it's not going to work as a whole. Liverpool, through the lever of 2008, really did manage to revitalize its economy and produce some new facilities. The Liverpool One City Centre retail district, we got a cruise terminal, new infrastructure that wasn't there before. We got a World Heritage Site designation. I'm not saying that all of this happened because of 2008, but it did happen because everybody began to work in the same direction and focus their activity on collaboration. And we now have an annual business conference. So that's our cruise terminal. And what we learned, I think, are some values, even if we didn't have these in the beginning, that the local is the most important thing. Unless people like to be where they are, well, in the case of Liverpool, they leave, they go somewhere else. It's important that people don't leave their hometown because they are the most important resource that the town has. So start with the local, make sure that everybody's included, make sure that everybody's connected with everybody else, make sure that everybody recognizes diversity of culture as well as diversity of ethnicity or whatever. And don't forget the business, because unless culture is sustainable, culture will disappear. Culture has to be economically sustainable. Thank you very much.
Louis Bix, thank you.